I was on looking at some memes yesterday, and somebody quoted something like, adulthood is when you realize that your childhood is over. And I thought it was kind of interesting. So then I thought quite a long time about that. And obviously, if I'm thinking about it that long, I'm going to make a video about it. And so here's my take on what I sort of took from that and thought about it. Now, I think, so when we're young, we have this blissful, careless feeling towards the world, right? You have it's like a brand new, not brand new, like a budding, beautiful, flowering rose. Hundreds of petals on it. It's gorgeous, right? And I remember as a kid running up and down the street with my friends, riding bikes, playing with my brother in the yard. Like my favorite sort of memory or time is like at dusk, like the sun is just about to set. We're outside playing. It's like a summer evening. We don't have school in the morning. We're running like with our shoes off and just having a great time, right? The only concern was getting home before the streetlights came on. That was my only concern. And my flower was pretty full. And now we all have these moments, I think, that we can look back on that remind us of like an awesome moment in our childhood, or a day or an emotion or something that really sparks sort of that childhood feeling. And now as we get older, parts of our petals start to fall off a little bit. Our friends move away. Maybe we have to move because our parents have to relocate for whatever reason. So we move, we lose our friends, we just start a new school, and we feel like our flower is being pulled apart. Petal by petal, we're slowly losing a little bit of our flower. People start to die. We get a little bit older. The stresses of feeling like you want to fit in with your friends or a community start to set in. And now you feel like your flower is sort of at risk. And then I remember I started working at like 15 years old at a grocery store. I was pushing grocery carts and filling bags and stuff like that. And prior to that, you like blissfully look forward to Christmas morning, right, to see if you got that Red Ryder BB gun that you wanted for so long. And you stay up and you try to fight it all night, and you wake up in the morning to see if Santa's come, and you have this feeling of like excitedness that you know is happening, and you can't sleep at night, but you need to. Some of the cookies are gone when you wake up, and it's that feeling. You know the feeling. And then as I got older and had to start working, like I didn't really get to spend time anymore. My Christmas Eve with my family, Thanksgivings and holidays were dwindled down to what I could do on my lunch break at work. And so the holiday feeling kind of got pulled apart, petal by petal. We got a little bit older and the petals started going away. And then I started working, and so with the new money I had, I was super excited. But then I started paying taxes. We all know how that is. And after I started having a job, wow, this thing's going crazy today. After I started having my job, I bought a car. So now I have my own car. I can go where I wanted, when I wanted. But that came with a car payment. That came with buying my own insurance. I had to pay to get my license and get my permit. I had to pay for gas. I had to pay for all the insurance on my truck. I had to save up for a little bit of a down payment. And now there's a little bit more stress applied to me because it's not just about bliss anymore. Now there's a little bit more concern. And then high school ends and I start college, and now I have to start working more because I have tuition to pay for, I have books to pay for, I had food I needed to pay for. Gas got a little bit more expensive because school and work were too far apart. So gas got more and I had to work more. Then I was stressing between having to go to work and go to school. And so time with my family really got sort of put to the side. And more pedals started getting pulled out. Family members around me started dying. Close family friends started dying. Friends of mine started dying. They move away. Friendships were ending. And more pedals are getting pulled apart. Now, this happens to everyone. I'm not saying this is uniquely to me. But there are those who hold on to that flower that they had when they were kids. They hold on to that same flower that now has 7 petals left, and they look at it and they're angry at all the different people and all the different situations that have pulled apart their once beautiful flower. They hold grudges and resentment to the life around them that have slowly dwindled this once beautiful red blossoming rose is now a few petals in their hand. The stem is barely holding on, and they're angry. And then there are those who take that flower, put it in a case, say that was an amazing childhood I had, but I'm starting a new rose now with who I am now. And it's not that they're starting all fresh, and they're not forgetting their childhood, they're not forgetting the beauty they once had, but they're restarting a new flower and building from scratch. And then I have friends who are now married, having kids, and they've started a new flower altogether with their family and say, my family is my new rose, and my kids are my petals. And their life, and all they're trying to do is be happy and have this great life with their kids. But then stuff will inevitably happen. They lose a job, they get demoted, they have to lose their house, they have to relocate, and so they have to move homes and get away from the home they once called their home and start somewhere new. Maybe have to get an apartment, have to change cities altogether because the city they're living in is either too unsafe or it's too expensive to live in. So they move states, they move cities, they move far away. And as they're doing this, as they're trying to promote the best life possible, they're inevitably pulling a rose petal from their child's flower. And it's unintentional. Nobody actively wants to harm another person's happiness and flower and rose. But there's a part of it that you have to say, I had to do what I had to do. And there is no manual for growing up. There's no instruction guide to how to do it better. You take the situation you have and you try to make the absolute best out of it. And that's all of us are trying to do, is get the best outcome for the situation we are in. But sometimes, in order to do that, we have to negatively affect someone else's flower, or we have to negatively affect our own. And I know they say a lot about sacrifice for your kids and sacrifice for your family, but at some point you have to take your own, you want to take your own into account as well and make yourself happy. And now some people have different roses throughout their life. Like, I know people who didn't get a job until they were 30. They live at home still. His family supports him. He gets like money every week to go spend. He doesn't have a job. I think he's my age. He's 34, I believe. And everything that most of us have had to gone through, he hasn't really had to go through. And then there are those who are 10 years old, and when we all had a pretty flowering rose, they're starting with very minimal. They've been abused, or they've been neglected, or they've been molested or assaulted. They come home and their parents are strung out high on the floor, and now at 10 years old, they're the caretaker for their 3-year-old sibling. They're the ones having to be the provider for their siblings when they're only children. And what we would assume they would have a blossoming flower, they're starting with four petals. And they don't really have a grudge. They don't have that much anger. They just have sadness because they don't know any other life. They don't know that a flower could be better. They just assume that life will always be and always is sucky. And then there are those who have a great childhood, they have a great blossoming flower growing up, and every petal they lose, they hold that anger and they hold that grudge because it's somebody else's fault that they don't have that bliss, that dopamine that we have flooding our brains as children, because life is perfect and there are no rainy days. Every day is a great day to be alive. That slowly gets diminished. You wake up and Christmas morning isn't the same anymore. And in case there's children watching, the rest of you know what I mean. It's not that same. The excitement you once had for presents becomes gift cards in a card under the tree. It just becomes, Christmas becomes an expensive time of year and becomes stressful because you're having to pay for presents for everybody around you. When at one point, it was all about receiving. And now it's seemingly all about giving, and it becomes stressful because the fourth quarter of the year is a tough quarter for a lot of businesses. But mortgages don't change, insurances don't change, food doesn't change, but life expenses do. And it's just more and more petals getting removed. And now the dopamine, you try to find it and you try to fill it with any way you can because you miss that feeling of bliss. You miss the feeling of that carelessness that once was, that everything was butterflies and rainbows. And now you look at your rose and it's not. And so we fill it with alcohol, we fill it with drugs, we fill it with sex or with gambling, or we fill it with Hollywood movies, because in Hollywood we can watch these movies of these heroes that have similar styles to us. They have their rose has been depleted just like ours has been, but they rise up and they can do more. They can come before their rose and say, I'm in charge. And so we have these people like Peter Parker and Luke Skywalker and Iron Man and Harry Potter, and these people that have these depleted roses. Bilbo Baggins, who has to now go on this journey, and it's rough. And we watch them with astonishment, and for a few hours we can escape into this fantasy land where there is no more rent. Nobody asks how much it costs to run the Millennium Falcon. No one asks Harry Potter how much he spent in food over the last 15 years. They're not concerned with that. All they're concerned with is the fantasy of the fight and the win, and the good guy wins. And for a moment, our dopamine is resurged, and we stay there. Or we go to Disneyland, because Disneyland was always a place, it's the most magical place on earth. And so we go to experience these childhood memories that we always have had. Although it is a little bit more expensive now, there's something about Disneyland that I think we don't mind spending money at because it's Disneyland. And we're always outraged at the prices, but we spend them anyway. Or we go to theme parks that we know that we loved. We listen to music about singers who write songs about the things that we can relate with. Working 9 to 5 and coming home with nothing, and having these days that are just so hard, but we're losing loved ones and losing those we care about, and relationships ending, and the sadness that comes with it. And we listen to these songs on repeat because you can put music to the feelings that we have inside that are really unexplained. Songs are written in minor keys that let us feel the sadness in our soul. We can feel when they talk about their loss. Those opening notes of the blues, those opening notes from Adele's old songs, or Sam Smith singing songs about loss. And we relate so much. And for a moment, we know we're not alone because these people have it just like we do. And growing up is realizing that our flowers will get diminished, but we have to face it anyway. And then as we age, the people above us, our family members, our close family starts to pass away. The people we look to at one point for guidance, our parents, our aunts and uncles, foster parents, and whoever you may be living with. These people that once guided us are now gone. And now we have no more superior. We feel like we're on our own. And the lessons they gave us are all in our memory, and you have to find them back in the databases of our mind to pull together these lessons that we need to move forward, but you don't have them there to ask. And so we look at the Force in Star Wars, where they have these rough moments and he can go ask, and they speak to him through his mind and through the Force, and we think that's amazing because although he has someone who's lost, he hasn't really lost them. And so he can hold this feeling that he is still a child. He can still hold himself or his parents accountable because he can still go ask. And the movie ends and we leave and we realize that we don't have that. We don't have that ability to talk to them and to have them talk back to us to give us guidance. And life gets more and more difficult. And then we may lose a child, or they move off to college, or they get married and move away and start a family of their own. And although we're happy for them, our petals are still getting pulled away. You've done everything you can to create a good and happy life, and yet your petals are still getting pulled away. Marriages will end. You'll have to move. We'll lose our jobs. We'll lose friends. And you're trying your absolute best to be happy. But slowly, our petals are getting pulled. And so we hold anger and resentment for those who have pulled our flower petals out and said, "You're the reason why I'm unhappy." But all any of us are trying to do is be happy. And sometimes, although we want to or not, it may negatively affect someone else's rose. And knowing that also pulls a petal out of your own rose. And that's so sad. And that's part of growing up. That's part of becoming an adult, is realizing that it's only going to get more difficult. But you look back on the rose petals you've lost and said, "I've stood strong this entire time." Your rose may be losing its petals, but the stem is still strong. And the best you can do is the best you can do. That's kind of all I have to say about that.